Sora was a lonely schoolboy living in Japan because his bald father went to get milk but never returned. As he chose a life of traveling the world instead of raising his son, he spent his days trying to get through school, when one day he finds a package with a cursed mummy inside of it which changes his life. The package was sent by his dad, which was really unusual, as he never really talked to his dad ever since he left. Upon opening it, he finds a giant casket and a letter from his dad, which explains that the casket contains a cute mummy he found in Egypt, that he decided to give to Sora in the hope that he'll take care of it and treat it as family. Sora gets war flashbacks from the other times his father sent him fun things, which turned out to be bloodthirsty cursed objects, and finds it hard to believe his dad's word. He arms himself with an iron to fight the mummy, which will soon burst out of the rumbling casket. However, when the door finally opens, he finds a tiny mummy inside. He is still suspicious of it and pushes it back into the casket to seal it and ship it back to Egypt. When he notices liquid leaking out from the bottom, once he opens the casket again, he finds the mini mummy crying. Even though he starts thinking the mummy isn't actually dangerous, he decides it's best to put it back where it came from, but the mummy refuses to enter the casket and silently begs him to keep it in exchange for doing household chores. Sora doubts its ability to do any work because of its size, but after seeing another tear in its eyes, he gives it a chance. The mummy tries its best to cook or wash the dishes but fails miserably. However, by this time Sora's heart softens, and he decides to keep the mummy. He digs out all the books he has at home about Egyptian history but can't find any useful information about tiny, cute, and alive mummies. His studying is interrupted by his dog named Pochi, who runs to him for hugs. The mummy sees this and gets jealous of his affection for Pochi, so it barks and jumps onto Sora's back. Sora panics and tries to grab it, for which he puts Pochi down, who also angrily barks at him out of jealousy. He quickly picks the dog up again and the two begin barking at him for all of his attention, making him realize that all the mummy wants is affection. He decides to first name the mummy and settles on Mikuin. The mummy understands this as confirmation that he'll get to stay with Sora, so he cries tears of happiness and hugs him. After that's sorted, he tries to get Mikuin to drink some water, but he's unable to do so until he finds a bottle cap small enough for the mummy's mouth. While Pochi devours its food, Mikuin stares sadly, which makes Sora dig through his entire kitchen for food that Mikuin might like. He cuts various vegetables, fruits, and meats into small pieces and presents them one by one to Mikuin to test which ones he will eat. During this, he discovers that Mikuin loves shirataki noodles and will slurp them right up. They spend hours doing this exercise, until Mikuin is too tired and falls asleep cuddling Pochi. The next day, Sora tells his school friend Tazuki about everything and invites him home to meet Mikuin. Once they enter his house, Sora is horrified to see Mikuin laying flat on the table and begins panicking. While Tazuki doesn't understand what the big deal is, because mummies are supposed to be dead, Sora quickly gives Mikuin some water, which causes him to return to his cute and lively self. Relieved, Sora tries to introduce Mikuin to Tazuki, but his glare intimidates Mikuin to the point that he begins shaking. Tazuki tries to reach out to him, but Mikuin crawls away from his hand and hides behind Sora's back. Sora apologizes for Mikuin's shyness, but Tazuki lets out a creepy smile and reveals that he finds the mummy super cute and wishes to toy with him. While leaving, Tazuki ominously says he will visit again, but Sora calms Mikuin down by assuring him nothing will happen. The next day, Tazuki gives Sora his English notes to copy because he's a dummy who will fail the class if he doesn't do well on the next test. He kindly offers to help Sora study and says that he'll come over after his school club activities are over. Once Sora returns home, he finds Mikuin all dried up and dead again, so he frantically gives him water to drink. Once he's back to normal, Sora asks if he drinks enough water while he's away, to which Mikuin nods yes. Sora decides to keep thinking about this after he's made dinner, with which Mikuin tries to help out by grabbing a knife, but he struggles to even pick it up. Sora admires his determination and snaps one of his knives in half to make a smaller blade for Mikuin, which he holds and happily runs around with. Sora gives him a small piece of cucumber, which Mikuin immediately starts chopping with all his strength. While cutting, one of the pieces rolls away, causing him to go after it and trip over it and fall from the counter. Despite having his back turned, Sora's spidey senses start tingling, and he immediately launches himself at Mikuin and grabs him before he hits the ground, slamming his own face against the wall in the process. Mikuin feels bad for hurting him and begins apologizing with tears in his eyes, which Sora gently wipes away while telling him not to cry. His constant kindness causes Mikuin to see Sora as one of those handsome dream boys in anime. After preparing dinner, Sora sits with Tezuki's notes to copy while Mikuin watches. He gets fascinated by the activity of turning pages and tries to turn a page himself, but instead ends up wrinkling the paper. Sora tells him to stop because he doesn't want to ruin Tezuki's notebook, but not wanting to make Mikuin feel left out, he spends his valuable prep time to make a mini picture book for him. When Tezuki arrives, he catches Sora red-handed for procrastinating but doesn't have the heart to scold him after seeing Mikuin proudly showing off his new picture book. Sora goes into the kitchen to get him a snack, leaving the terrified Mikuin alone with Tezuki, who stares at him silently the entire time. Once Sora arrives with handmade pumpkin dessert, Tezuki exclaims how good it looks, which Mikuin interprets as him saying that he looks like a really good mummy snack. Sora offers to pack some desserts for Tezuki to take home, leaving Mikuin and Tezuki alone again. Mikuin runs behind the table vase and peeks out to watch Tezuki carefully. While Tezuki thinks of ways to let Mikuin touch him, he takes some of the dessert on his fork and offers it to Mikuin with a smile. This has the opposite effect of making Mikuin cry because he imagines Tezuki saying he wants Mikuin to eat the dessert to get all fattened up so that he can eat him after, like a typical high school bully. Seeing Mikuin so afraid makes Tezuki want to mess with the mummy more. Next, Tezuki puts more effort into the smile, which makes Mikuin take the risk and slowly walk up to his fork to eat it. However, before he can take a bite, Tezuki grabs him and starts poking around to try and unwind his bandage and see what's inside, but is unable to find the end. Sora catches him in the act and smacks his head to make him drop Mikuin and yells at him to not remove Mikuin's bandage because it said so on his dad's letter. He says that he thinks Mikuin's bandages are what skin is to humans, so Tezuki shouldn't unwrap it unless he also would want to know what happens when you skin a human. This thought scares Tezuki enough that he feels bad and apologizes. Sora gives him a piece of dog food and tells him to use it to make up with Mikuin. Feeling nervous, Tezuki apologizes to Mikuin about earlier and offers the dog food in his hand. Mikuin senses his genuine feelings, so he runs toward him and takes the dog food. Instead of eating it, Mikuin puts it aside and holds Tezuki's finger and starts rubbing his face on it. This completely melts Tezuki's heart, and he tells Sora that Mikuin is so cute that he can never think of messing with him anymore. After the whole thing is settled, Tezuki and Sora drink tea while Mikuin nibbles on his dog food. Sora tells Tezuki that he found Mikuin dried up again after school and that he will have to take Mikuin to school if it happens again. Tezuki laughs because he thinks he's joking, but then realizes that he's totally serious. Just as he said, Sora sneaks Mikuin into school a couple of days later. During class, Mikuin keeps poking his head out of Sora's bag because he has serious attachment issues. After class, Sora explains to Tezuki that he had to bring him because he dried up 4 days in a row, and he is no closer to knowing the reason why. He makes Mikuin pinky promise that he will pretend to be a stuffed toy and not let anyone at school know he's a live mummy. Upon Tezuki's suggestion, Sora puts Mikuin inside his desk so that no one can accidentally kick him. However, Mikuin ends up cutely sneezing, which ends up alerting Magi, a girl from their class who excitedly asks Sora about his mummy doll. Sora nervously places Mikuin on his desk for her to see and hopes that she didn't hear the sneeze. In the next second, Magi says that she's never heard of a sneezing stuffed toy and asks what else it can do. Sora tries to convince her that it was actually him that made that kitten-like sneeze but ends up coughing instead. Magi starts poking Mikuin because he's so soft, but Sora knows that Mikuin won't be able to take much more, so he makes her stop by saying that she can have the stuffed toy if she likes it that much. Both Mikuin and Tezuki are shocked at his statement but learn soon after that he meant to stitch up Mikuin identical stuffed toys for her. After he's done, Magi suddenly runs into the room, thereby forcing Mikuin to play dead at his spot next to the other dolls. She marvels at the line of toys, picks one, and leaves after thanking Sora. Sora and Tezuki let out a sigh of relief because the matter is behind them until they realize that the stuffed toy she picked was the actual Mikuin. They try to track her down in the classroom, but the next period ends up being gym on the field. They keep a watchful eye on Magi to try and spot Mikuin, but since he's not visible, they guess that he might be kept in her small bag. Sora decides he will finish the marathon as quickly as possible so that he can approach Magi. After he crosses the finish line in record speed, he runs toward Magi to ask her what's in the bag. She opens it and offers the towel inside, confirming that Mikuin is not in there. Meanwhile, Mikuin is left alone in Magi's locker in the girls' changing room, which causes him to cry. He spots a hole in the opposite wall and pictures himself crawling through it and finding Sora and Tezuki, who will be glad to see him. He starts climbing down with the help of a jacket sleeve when a girl enters the changing room to get the towel she forgot. Mikuin freezes in place, but by the time she's out, he starts shaking and loses his grip on the sleeve. causing him to fall down. Mikun stares into the abyss of the hole but toughens up and walks in. He soon stumbles into a dead end, but he carries on by climbing the wall and ends up in a vent. In it he runs into a rat who chooses violence and begins chasing him. Mikun runs for his life and eventually ends up outside the building. While Sora and Tezuki frantically discuss what their next move should be, they hear rustling in the bushes beside them, and the next thing they see is Mikun jumping out towards Sora with tears in his eyes. Once he lands, he runs in circles around Sora as the rat continues to chase him, but Tezuki captures it with his towel, which allows Sora to hold Mikun. Suddenly remembering his promise to Sora, he drops dead like a stuffed toy, but Sora tells him he doesn't need to pretend now. Mikun is so happy to be back with Sora that he hugs his nose and they have an adorable bonding moment. Before the next period, Magi approaches Sora and tearfully apologizes to him for losing the mummy doll he made for her on the very first day here. During that, he brings out one of the mummy dolls and says that everything is okay because he found it on the hallway floor. Relieved, Magi holds her cute stuffed toy and thanks him with a big smile. The next morning, Sora asks Mikun if he wants to come to school again or if he'd rather stay in the comfort of their home. Mikun carefully thinks about the pros and cons of going to the hellscape that is school and ultimately decides that nothing can beat spending more time with Sora. The next morning, Sora's aunt named Kaide, who lives with him as his guardian but mostly stays cooped up in her room due to her heavy workload, finally comes out of her den after a whole week. She is immediately greeted by Pochi, who jumps into her arms, and while she pets him she notices an open lunchbox on the table. She admires it for some time because it looks so cute, but then realizes that it contains a single apple slice, a tiny portion of shiraki noodles, and a few pieces of dog food. This shocks her so much that when Sora walks into the room, she starts shaking him while crying out that he should have told her if he didn't have enough money and that he shouldn't be so considerate of expenses that he'll eat dog food. Eventually, she ends up dropping to the floor while crying, so Sora decides it's time to tell her everything. He brings Mikun to her and introduces them to each other. While Kaide takes a close look at Mikun, Sora talks about how his dad sent him in a casket. This makes her ears prick up and she tells him to show the casket. As soon as she sees it, she ends up drooling all over it while saying that this is exactly what she has always wanted. Sora leaves her alone to have fun with the casket to go to school, but ends up falling down from weakness at the front door. After Kaide finds him like that, he is carried to his bed, and they find out that he has a high fever. Despite being so sick and weak, he doesn't let them fuss over him and kicks them out of his room because he doesn't want them to catch his cold. Kaide and Mikun awkwardly sit on the couch together until Kaide decides to make the first move by saying that he doesn't have to be nervous because she has met plenty of species like him, and that she's very happy to have such a cute member in their family. She extends her finger toward Mikun for him to hold and shake hands with. Once they become friends, Sora calls Kaide to ask her to leave water by his door because he can't really move. This scares the out of her and she tries to make him let her in, but he puts his body against the door to prevent her from entering. Kaide doesn't take no for an answer and busts into the room through the window while wearing a gas mask and having Mikun on her shoulder, who has a band-aid on his mouth as a mask. She gives him a filled water bottle and wants to put a wet towel over his head, but he kicks her out before she can take care of him. The two sulk for a while until Kaide decides she should make some porridge for Sora. She lays Mikun on Pochi and tells him to rest there with Sora's handkerchief. As Mikun watches her work in the kitchen, he gets reminded of his dear Sora and starts crying. The next time she checks on him, he is shriveled up and appears dead. She starts yelling out for Sora, who comes and asks what happened. She shows him poor Mikun and says that she found him like that, and despite making him drink more water to make up for the water he lost from crying, he hasn't gotten better and refuses to let go of the handkerchief. This makes Sora realize that the reason for Mikun drying up every day was not because of not drinking enough water, but because he would cry out of loneliness when Sora left for school. This cuteness weakens Sora's heart so much that he faints again while hugging Mikun. Kaide carries him back to the room, puts a wet towel on his forehead to help with the fever, and lets Mikun stay by his side this time. Later that day, Tezuki visits Sora with a tray of food and medicine. He tells Sora that he came as soon as he heard from Kaide, and now that he's here, she locked herself up in her room for some urgent work. Sora requests him to feed Pochi and Mikun before he leaves, which leaves Tezuki wondering how he can worry about other things when he's so sick. Later that night, Sora starts having a coughing fit which wakes Mikun up. He recalls Kaide dipping the towel in a water bowl and placing it on his forehead, so he tries dragging the towel but ends up falling down the edge of the bed. Unable to carry it up, he climbs up the table on his own and jumps into the water bowl to soak up water. Once he swells up, he crawls on top of Sora's forehead, which gives him instant relief. Mikuin spends the entire night doing this to make sure Sora has a good sleep. The next day Sora wakes up with a full recovery and he's back to his usual energetic self. Mikuin greets him happily but ends up sneezing, revealing that he has fallen sick now. Sora calls Tezuki to inform him that he will skip another school day because he needs to take care of Mikuin, to which Tezuki advises him to not overexert himself because he might fall sick again. After the call, Sora wraps a handkerchief around a shivering Mikuin, but Mikuin points to the outside. Sora says that it's not a good idea to go outside because it's so cold, but Mikuin keeps insisting as if he is desperate to go. Sora gives in and carries him outside after covering him in a scarf and hat. As soon as he lets Mikuin go, Mikuin runs away and starts digging a hole into the ground but is mostly unsuccessful because he's tiny and weak. Sora has no idea what he's trying to do but decides to help him out by getting a shovel. However, Pochi comes in clutch and quickly digs a hole. Before that, Mikuin runs toward the hole, takes the scarf and hat off, makes the hole nice and snug and jumps into it. Sora gets confused and worries about this but decides to wait for Mikuin to come out himself. While waiting, he goes through his dad's letter to see if there's some explanation but finds nothing. As the hours pass by, Sora gets more and more worried and finally breaks down after remembering the time he tried to rescue an injured sparrow. Tezuki yelled at him not to take it because it was already almost dead and no matter how much he tried the bird would die, and the one that would be suffering is Sora. He had still taken it home and when it had inevitably passed away, he couldn't stop crying while his father comforted him the entire time. Now he is filled with regret for letting Mikuin stay with him when he was sick because he foolishly assumed that he wouldn't catch the cold because he's a mummy, and that mistake might lead to Mikuin's death. Suddenly, mid-breakdown, Mikuin pops out of the hole and Sora immediately runs to check on him. He hears Mikuin's stomach growling at that point, so he takes him inside and gives him food and water. Watching him eat like a cutie assures Sora that Mikuin is all fine, and despite being covered in mud just minutes ago, Sora notices that Mikuin seems to be shining white now. Later that evening, Kaide makes Japanese hot pot for dinner, and Tezuki comes over to check on them. While leaving, he tells Sora that he came to make sure Sora hadn't lost his confidence after Mikuin got sick, but is glad that it's not the case. Once Sora confirms it, Tezuki reminds Sora that he's like family to him and says goodbye. Before going to bed that night, Sora makes an observations journal where he writes down everything he knows about Mikuin in the hope that it'll help him learn everything about Mikuin. A few days later, Tezuki is walking back home after a hectic day at school and work when he notices something strange. He suddenly stops and looks at the streetlight behind him while saying that he knows someone is following him and that they should just leave because he doesn't have anything to give them. At that moment, a small red creature comes out from behind the streetlight and stares at him with snot running down its nose. Tezuki realizes that it's a child demon and that it'll grow up to be huge and muscular and too much trouble for him, so he simply starts walking away. However, the toddler demon still follows him, so Tezuki warns him again and tells him that if he wants to be taken care of, he should go to Sora's house with a red roof because his family is kind to everybody, including demons. He assures the red demon that if he asks, Sora will feed him. The demon nods his head like he understands, which relaxes Tezuki, who continues his way back home thinking that he'll apologize to Sora later. Once he's back home, his little sister, Tsukio, greets him and fusses over him returning so late. He goes upstairs to his room, but as soon as he opens the door, he sees the child demon standing outside the window and staring at him while shivering. Tsukio notices her brother's weird behavior, but Tezuki says nothing, takes a deep breath and enters his room. He harshly tells the demon that he can stare at him as long as he wants, but he will not let him in and draws the curtains shut. Later that night, Tezuki sits at his desk to do his homework but gets curious and decides to check the window, only to find the child demon still there out in the cold. Finally, he lets the child demon in while saying it's only for one night. After giving the demon tissues to clean up his snot, he goes to the kitchen to figure out what to feed him. Eventually, he comes back with a cup of tea to see the troublesome kiddo on his bed. He pulls him out of the bed because he's dirty and tells him he needs to take a bath first. The demon nods yes and dives straight into the cup of boiling tea and jumps out within the next second because he gets burned. Tezuki quickly gives him an ice pack to cool off while teasing him for being the dumbest demon alive. At that moment, Tezuki notices some scars on the child demon's hands, which brings back a dark memory, but he immediately distracts himself to forget about it. The next day, Tezuki kicks the child demon out of his house like a bad one-night stand and tells him not to come back again. At school, Tezuki tells Sora all about the child demon that followed him home, saying that he's been nothing but a cause for a headache because his stupid derpy face lets him get away with anything. Sora interprets this as Tezuki's way of saying he loves the demon and tells him to keep him. Tezuki is baffled over how his friend could give him that advice after what he said. Later that day, Tezuki returns home to see the child demon outside his window again, so he lets him in, saying that it's just for one more night, and throws him out the next morning. This pattern keeps going for days until his sister, Tsukio, suggests he give the demon a name because he's been taking care of him for a while. This forces Tezuki to accept that the child demon is living under his roof now. A week after the child demon broke into his house first, Tezuki wonders what his past was. He speculates that maybe he was kicked out during the Setsubun festival that happened 2 weeks ago, which is meant to drive away bad omens, but quickly rules the possibility out because the child demon was way too dirty when Tezuki found him and has many old scars on his body. His injuries make Tezuki uncomfortable because they bring back bad memories. He first learned about demons in preschool when he befriended Sora, who would always do weird things outside all alone. One day he found Sora playing with a child demon who explained to him what they are. Initially, he would only encounter demons when he was with Sora, but soon enough he started seeing them on his own. Sora explained that his dad claimed that the demons communicated with each other about humans that helped them, and other demons would only approach those humans. One day, he found an injured baby dragon who he took in and tried to heal but failed. Tezuki now regrets his decision and wishes he knew more about these creatures' situations before trying to care for them. After thinking about all this, he harshly tells his demon that he never approved of him staying in his house, so he should get out. The child demon ignores this and points at the scar on Tezuki's arm and then points at his own, as if to say that they're twins because they have the same scar. After that, he jumps to the plate of food and begins eating, which frustrates Tezuki into giving up for the day. The next day, Tezuki comes back home to see the demon in a bad mood while holding the Mikuin stuffed toy Sora gave him. Tezuki says that he can keep it if he wants, but the demon instead throws it away and lets out a sigh, making Tezuki realize that he really doesn't know how to read his behavior. He brings the demon to Sora's house and the boys introduce the demon and Mikuin to each other, who simply stare at each other in silence. Tezuki tells Sora about the stuffed toy incident, to which Sora guesses that the demon wanted Tezuki to use the toy to play with him. Then they watch the two cuties stare at each other when Mikuin finally makes the first move by stepping forward. The demon immediately takes a step back, and then another when Mikuin comes forward again. Eventually Mikuin ends up running after the demon, who refuses to let him get close until both of them become exhausted. While the demon is still catching his breath, Mikuin walks up to him slowly and taps him. They seem to come to an understanding and the demon gives Mikuin a thumbs up. Immediately Mikuin starts running while the demon chases him, making Tezuki and Sora realize they're now playing tag. Pochi also joins in and the boys watch as they all become friends. Sora then asks Tezuki what he's going to name the demon, to which Tezuki is about to say that he doesn't need one but stops himself when he notices the demon staring at him intently. He gives in to those puppy dog eyes and decides to call him Kani. To celebrate the moment, Sora organizes a hand-rolled sushi session where everyone is supposed to bond while making sushi. Sora is an expert who basically makes artwork in the name of sushi, while Tezuki and Kani have a rough start. After help from Sora, Kani finally makes a complete sushi roll, which he proudly shows to Tezuki and then suddenly shoves into his mouth. Tezuki gets pissed, but Sora points out that Kani saved his best roll to give to him, so Tezuki thanks him. In the end, Tezuki makes a Kani-designed roll for Kani, and Sora makes a Mikuin-designed roll for Mikuin. Mikuin ends up crying after seeing it, while Kani gives Tezuki a thumbs up after each bite to show his appreciation. Before leaving, Tezuki gives Sora a bunch of notes of what to feed an Oni child to Sora in case he needs help with Mikuin, which reassures Sora that Tezuki has full intention to keep Kani. Later that night, Tezuki finds Kani sleeping while cuddling the Mikuin's stuffed toy. Seeing this, he has to admit to himself that Kani is pretty cute and that he's only been avoiding the demon because he's scared of losing him like he lost the dragon, and if it happens it'll be nobody's responsibility but his own. One day at school, Mikuin keeps poking his head out of Sora's bag as usual despite him telling him not to. Tezuki suggests Sora start making Mikuin practice to stay at home alone since it's already been 2 months, and it'll make life much easier if he doesn't have to constantly worry about others discovering Mikuin. Taking Tezuki's advice, Sora decides to start Mikuin's training by going shopping and leaving Mikuin alone in the house for half an hour. He promises to Mikuin that if he manages not to cry while he's gone, he'll read him 2 bedtime stories that night. This thought makes him so happy that Mikuin starts dancing. Sora takes this as a green signal and runs out of the house so he can return quickly. Meanwhile, Magi had a huge scare by one of the toy lizards at school, despite being fearless with creepy insects. She cheers up after finding a new crepe shop. but when she returns home she finds a dragon in her room. She stares at the glorified giant lizard as it explores her room, until finally she snaps and screams for help. The dragon tries to make a peace offering by giving her a sheep stuffed toy, but she instead runs away and falls down the stairs. The dragon flies toward her to check on her, but she tries running to her mom only to find out she's not at home. Then she starts throwing things at the dragon to stop it from coming closer and eventually bashes it with a table. After that she bends over to check if she hurt it, but can't find it anywhere until she turns to the side to see the dragon right next to her. This scares the soul out of her body, and she runs out of the house and crashes into Sora, who is rushing to return home. Magi manages to make Sora understand that there's a lizard in her house through jumbled words, and he offers to help her. Once he opens the front door he finds the house in total ruin and feels sorry for the lizard, who might already be squashed under a shoebox. He begins looking around and finally digs out an orange creature from a cabinet and realizes it's a dragon. Once Magi sees it she loses her marbles again and tries to run away but stubs her toe against a cupboard. During this the dragon signals to Sora that Magi fell down the stairs and hurt her knee, after which he asks her about it and says that the dragon seems worried about her. This makes her look back at the earlier moments in a different light, and she realizes that the dragon was trying to be friendly from the beginning. She starts crying and apologizes for doing terrible things to the dragon. The dragon gives her a flower to show her it's okay, after which she swallows her fear of lizards and hugs it. After that Sora invites her and the dragon to his house to meet Mikuin. He also calls Tsuzuki over to surprise him with the dragon because he wanted to see one since he was a kid. On the way there Magi asks if he is close to Tsuzuki even outside of school, to which he replies that they've been best friends since preschool. Even when he was that young, his dad wasn't around most of the time, leaving him alone at home when preschool was over. Tsuzuki seemed to understand this, and he made sure that he was never alone without ever directly showing his true intentions. He stuck by Sora's side through all these years and showed he cared in his own way, which is why he knows that Tsuzuki has a big heart, even though he masks it with a cold exterior. Meanwhile Mikun has been passing time while carefully watching the clock and starts getting nervous once the promised time passes by a few minutes. Later he hears the front door open, so he bolts toward it to greet Sora but freezes in place after seeing Magi and the dragon in her bag. All this new stuff starts making his head spin, and despite trying his best not to, his eyes start crying out a river. Sora quickly praises him for managing to stay home alone and tells him not to cry. Once things settle down Sora explains to Magi about the variety of magical beings that exist in the world out of sight from humans. Even though they are friendly and adorable, he asks Magi to keep them a secret because not all humans may accept them or treat them well, and it may result in a panic. At that moment the bell rings signaling Tsuzuki's arrival. Sora greets him with a blindfold and asks Tsuzuki to let him tie it for a surprise, but this creeps Tsuzuki out. Ultimately it isn't needed because Tsuzuki spots the dragon in the hallway. Magi explains that she found it in her room, while Sora points out how he knows Tsuzuki always wanted to see a dragon. However, Tsuzuki's face changes for a moment, and he is very quiet until Sora asks him what's wrong. He quickly musters up a smile and says it's nothing. After that they all gather at the table with their weird pets to figure out what food the dragon eats, but it refuses everything from meats to vegetables and cheese. In the middle of it Kaede emerges from her nap in the casket and gets surprised to see a girl in the house. She and Magi introduce themselves to each other while thinking how cute and pretty the other one is. They all bring Kaede up to speed and show her that the dragon seems to be all right with beans and tofu out of everything. Before leaving Magi chooses to name her dragon Isao. While Sora walks her home she asks him how Mikuin found him, to which he answers that his father sent Mikuin from Egypt. Suddenly he wonders to himself why Mikuin has never wanted to return to his birthplace since he is so clingy. He even recalls Mikuin got really upset when he tried to send him back with the casket. He realizes there are still many unanswered questions about Mikuin's past, but he pushes the thoughts aside for the time being. The next day Magi almost spills the beans about Isao to her friends at school, so Sora and Tsuzuki corner her and tell her to share everything she wants about Isao to them because they're always open to listen. Immediately she starts gushing about how adorable and smart Isao is because he can serve himself food and go to the bathroom to wash his hands and feet. After Sora goes home and tells this to Kaede, who points out that while Isao gives older brother vibes, Mikuin gives youngest brother vibes. This prompts Sora to list all the times that Mikuin tried his best to help with chores and other tasks but failed in his classic adorable style, causing Kaede to laugh and say that Mikuin is more the cared for type than the caring type. This strikes a chord in Mikuin and Sora notices that he looks down. That weekend Tsuzuki and Magi come with their kiddos for a playdate. Isao immediately hugs Mikuin and Connie and puts them on his back to fly them around the room, while the grown-ups gossip over tea. Magi proudly announces that Isao now knows how to write and proudly shows off his work like an aunt boasting about their overachieving cousin's accomplishments. She claims that Isao naturally learned it after she read him some picture books. Tezuki gets impressed by this and decides to teach him the English alphabet as well. A couple of hours later, Isao manages to write his own name in English, which Tezuki remarks is already better than what dumbass Sora can do. While they marvel over Isao's smartness, Mikuin and Connie huddle around Isao in a corner and learn how to write Japanese from him. Mikuin approaches Sora with a folded note and gives it to him anxiously. Sora opens it to find that he has written the words, "always together," which is enough to make a grown man cry. Connie comes up to Tezuki and gives his note, which says, "How you like that?" Tezuki teases him in response while Connie beats him, which Sora and Magi stare at with confusion until they realize it's the pair's way of showing love for each other. After they finish lunch, Magi helps Sora with the dishes but finds that they're out of soap. Sora checks one of the cabinets for refills but instead finds a note that says, "Food was delicious," which Isao reveals was written by him. Tezuki finds another under the table which says, "Make sushi next time," which turns out to be Connie's creation. This makes them realize that the kiddos got so excited after learning how to write letters that they have made many notes and hidden them around the house. The trio splits up for a treasure hunt and eventually finds dozens of little notes all across the house. Once they gather all of them in the yard, Magi notices Connie messing around in Sora's garden. Sora urgently tells Connie not to touch the plant next to him, which of course prompts naughty Connie to put his hands all over it and pull it out from the ground. As soon as it's uprooted, the red veggie lets out a deafening squeal that doesn't stop until Sora tapes its mouth shut. He explains that it's a mandrake that his dad sent him long ago, and its shriek can knock a person out in 5 seconds and can even lead to death if exposed to it for too long. Magi asks why he's growing such a dangerous thing in his backyard, to which he replies that Kaide, who sleeps like the dead, is using them as an alarm clock. Suddenly the mandrake starts rolling rapidly, and before Sora can catch it, it escapes out of the house. They try to catch up to it, but it jumps into the river and floats with the current. They chase it along the bank while Mikuin and Connie try to help but fail as always. By this time, part of the mandrake's bandage is peeling off, so they need to act fast. Isao comes in clutch by flying over the river, grabbing the mandrake and bringing it back to them. They all smother Isao with praise, much to the dismay of Connie, who smacks Tezuki, and Mikuin, who silently retreats into Sora's hoodie. Once they're back at Sora's house, he notices that Mikuin still seems down for some reason. At that moment, Connie sneezes, which brings Mikuin up on his feet so he can cover Connie with a blanket and wipe the snot from his nose. After seeing this, Sora realizes that Mikuin has been hurt ever since he and Kaide were teasing him for being like a baby that needs taken care of. Sora didn't notice it until now, but Mikuin has slowly been growing. He pats Mikuin's head and calls him a good boy, which immediately raises the mummy's spirits again. A few days later, Sora bumps into a student in the hallway who looks miserable and collapses on top of him. The guy doesn't wake up, so Sora carries him up to the roof where Mikuin, Tezuki, and Magi are waiting for him to have lunch. Once he's up the stairs, he no longer has the strength to hold the guy, so Magi swoops in and Princess carries him, leaving Tezuki stunned over how strong the other two are. Once they set him down, Sora explains that this sleeping weirdo is banned from the school clinic because he caused some damage to school property. Since he has nowhere to go now, Sora brought him here. This reminds Tezuki about the time Suzuki told him there's a delinquent in their batch who recently went crazy in the nurse's office, got kicked out, and hasn't returned to normal since. Suddenly the guy starts rolling around and moaning in his sleep, causing Magi to check on him. He yells out to stay away from him and gets up to punch her, but thankfully Sora pushes her out of the way. After making sure she's okay, he checks on the guy and notices that his hand is bleeding from the blow earlier, so he runs to his aid, but the guy pushes him back and tells him not to mess with him. This pisses Tezuki off, who confronts him and demands to know what his deal is. The guy tries to scare him off too, but Tezuki holds his ground and gives him a threatening glare. Sora butts in and tries to ease tensions, but the guy backs off on his own. Even though any normal person would never speak to that guy ever again, Sora goes to his classroom to check on him again. The guy grunts at him to leave him alone, but Sora gives him a bandage for his hand and asks if he wants to walk home together, while everyone else stares at this exchange in shock. His uncanny kindness baffles the guy enough for him to agree, and they leave the school together. On their way, the guy explains that he lives in a condo alone because his parents kicked him out for repeatedly breaking everything during his many violent sleepwalking episodes. He claims to have nightmares every day. which cause him to act up, leading Sora to guess that he was stumbling around in the hallway because he doesn't get enough sleep. He suggests the guy try and cure his sleepwalking problem, but he replies that the doctors have no idea what causes it and they've given up. He adds that he uses protective charms to ward the nightmares off, but even that doesn't work. This catches Sora's attention, who asks to see the charms himself because using too many can cause more harm than good. The guy can sense Sora's genuine nature, so he leads him to his house where he shows his room, in which every inch is covered with protective charms. Sora takes most of them down and explains that he has many charms that he doesn't need. For instance, he has charms against magical creatures called Baku, when they're supposed to eat up nightmares for him. He then gives the guy a drawing of Baku and tells him to put it under his pillow at night. The guy starts seeming more at ease in Sora's presence, so Sora introduces himself, after which the guy shares that his name is Daichi. Sora then gives him his phone number and tells him to call whenever he needs anything because he'll always be there. Later that night, Daichi puts the Baku drawing under his pillow and thinks about how good of a guy Sora is. He feels guilty for nearly punching Magi and decides to properly apologize for his behavior to Sora and his friends. He then falls asleep and doesn't wake up until hours later, which surprises him because he hasn't had a deep sleep in ages. He wonders if the drawing is actually working until he sees a weird creature on the other side of his room, eating up strange mist that is circulating in his room. This creeps the hell out of him, so he crawls under his blanket and calls Sora to tell him that something has come to eat his soul. Sora rushes to his house to see what's up and immediately recognizes the creature to be a Baku. He excitedly holds it for hugs and assures Daichi that it is totally harmless, after which Daichi hesitantly holds it. After they sit down, Sora explains that Baku are really rare to spot because they're very agile and usually run off before anyone can see them, but for whatever reason this Baku seems very intent on eating Daichi's dreams. All this information only confuses Daichi more, causing Sora to realize that he's never laid eyes on any weird creatures, so he introduces him to Mikuin. The next day, Sora struggles to stay awake at school because he spent the entire night talking to Daichi about all this stuff. He tells Tezuki and Magi all about what happened, which makes them want to see the fluffy and pillowy Baku. The three of them go to Daichi's class to check on him, but he seems to have taken the day off. He doesn't show up for the next 3 days, causing them to worry. When he's absent on the 4th day in a row, however, he shows up and greets Sora with a hearty laugh and very noticeably doesn't walk and talk like a zombie anymore. Everyone stares in awe as he seems like a totally different person. He explains that he slept through the 3 days and only woke up in the afternoon on this day, so he decided to come for whatever was left of the school day. He then earnestly apologizes for almost punching Magi, but she reveals that she already forgave him after Sora told her about his circumstances, and she hopes that he now is able to move on and sleep well. They then invite him to lunch, which he gratefully accepts. However, this leads to a painfully awkward situation where Daichi and Tezuki are alone on the roof with only Mikuin to act as a buffer. Daichi tries his best to hide his fear and anxiety that remained after Tezuki confronted him, while Tezuki maintains his usual coldness and distance. Sora and Magi arrive just when the tension gets too thick to cut with a knife, causing immense relief to the other two. Mikuin starts pushing Tezuki's hand toward Daichi, but he pulls it back while saying he'll play with him later. Mikuin starts barking and grabs Tezuki's arm again and doesn't let go even when he tries to pull him away. Sora guesses that Mikuin is trying to get Tezuki and Daichi to shake hands, which he proves correct by barking repeatedly after the suggestion. He doesn't stop barking until the two give in and shake hands. It is finally Mikuin's utter cuteness that makes everyone let their guard down and become friends. Later that day, all of them meet up at Sora's house, where all the goofy creatures get to know each other. There, Daichi decides to call the Baku Muku, after which all the kiddos and Pochi huddle up and go to sleep. Sora takes a picture of them, and after Tezuki inquires, he explains that it is for the observation notes he has been keeping of Mikuin to keep track of his growth and development. The next day, Daichi tells Sora that he has decided to start his new chapter with a good state of mind by apologizing to the nurse and the teachers he troubled. Sora says that it's all thanks to Muku, but Daichi asserts that half of it is thanks to Sora, who had the heart and patience to hear what he had to say and pull him out of his despair. Sora brushes this aside and says that he would of course do it because they're friends, which makes Daichi super happy because he's never had friends before. One day, Magi overhears a couple of shady men talking about hunting down a child demon that was spotted during the Setsubun festival. Once she returns home, she finds Connie in her bedroom along with Iso. She informs Tezuki about it and confirms that he's been coming to her house daily because her mom has seen him. This convinces Tezuki that they need someone to take care of the kiddos while they're away. Sora thinks about it for some time and announces that he has someone in mind who he will ask the next day while assuring the others that this person can be trusted. The next day Sora takes them to a shrine to visit a talking monk statue called Jiz, and he happily tells them that he would love to have these creatures around. He claims that it gets pretty lonely around here, so he would love the company as well. Apart from Tezuki, the others seem pretty shocked to see a Buddhist monk statue talk, and they ask whether Tezuki is also acquainted with it. Tezuki smiles and claims that he has been coming here to the shrine for a while, so he knows these statues pretty well. Jiz tells the others that he is pretty close with Sora and Tezuki, who wash his back oftentimes and also leave him dumplings as offerings. Magi and Daichi both introduce themselves politely when Daichi's attention is grabbed by Muku, who comes out of the bushes almost poking its eye out. Daichi walks to get him while Connie as usual jumps up on Jiz's head and starts smacking it. Tezuki grabs Connie off Jiz's head, while Magi asks Sora whether they should leave now as they are getting late. Before he could reply though, a mysterious figure emerges behind Sora, which scares the crap out of the others as they tell him to look behind. But before he could do anything, the mysterious figure grabs him from behind and flies away swiftly inside the temple. Everyone is very scared, but Daichi shows some guts and runs after him, followed by Magi. Before he could stop them, Daichi immediately opens the gates, and despite being scared screams at the figure to leave Sora alone. But to his surprise, he finds Sora sitting in front of the person having a tea party. Sora tells them that this lady is the god of this temple, and she has allowed them all to relax inside for a while. Both Daichi and Magi apologize for calling her names and entering without knocking, but the goddess tells them not to worry. Tezuki also follows them with all the baggage, and they sit down to have some tea. They decide that this is the best arrangement for now, as this place falls on the way back from school, and if anybody asks them, they can just lie that they are going to visit the shrine. Suddenly they remember that they also have to go to school, and they leave. During the lunch break, they sit together on the roof while talking to each other, and slowly Daichi gets familiar with both Magi and Tezuki. At first Tezuki seems a bit distant, but soon he also warms up to him as they start talking about what their familiars are doing at the shrine. Sora tells Magi that they should get together and make an apple pie for all of them to eat together, and Magi immediately agrees, claiming that she loves peeling apples. Later that day they all head out to the shrine where they each grab their familiars. But Muku seems to be in a pretty playful mood as he doesn't let Connie go back to Tezuki. Sora realizes that Mikuin looks pretty moist and plump today, and even the bandages feel softer. He asks Mikuin whether he had fun, and Mikuin immediately nods in agreement as they all decide to head back home. The next morning they all arrive at the shrine again, where they drop their familiars. While Sora thanks the goddess of the shrine once again for keeping them, he then says goodbye to Mikuin and promises to come back to him as soon as the school is over. The familiars started immediately playing and having fun under the watchful eye of the goddess, and as usual Connie is running around the entire area while Muku is trying to block his path again and again. While doing this, Muku ends up accidentally running into the main door, which opens just a bit. That was enough though, as Mikuin ends up spotting a ladybug crawling outside, and his curiosity takes over as he rushes out to have a look at it. He manages to make his way out of the crack in the door and sits down before picking the ladybug up and playing with it. Meanwhile, the goddess didn't notice Mikuin's absence but spots the slightly open door, so she gets up and closes it, shutting poor Mikuin outside. He gets scared and starts crying and knocking on the door, but obviously it is not enough and he soon gets tired. Suddenly he hears someone coming by. Mikuin immediately jumps down and hides behind a plank, waiting for the man to leave. After that he slowly tries to make his way outside but ends up running into a demon familiar that looks like Connie. The demon asks Mikuin whether he is lost, but Mikuin confuses him with Connie and thinks that he wants to go back inside the shrine together, so he nods his head. The demon however ends up taking Mikuin outside the shrine and away into the forest. While it starts raining, the demon gives him a leaf umbrella while Mikuin looks back at the shrine longingly, confused why Connie is going away from the shrine, not knowing that Connie is comfortably sleeping alongside the other familiars. The goddess suddenly counts the familiars and realizes that Mikuin is missing, but it's too late as he is already deep inside the forest. While walking, the demon suddenly stops as a nine-tailed fox emerges from the bushes and looks at the little mummy before walking away. Mikuin starts looking around, keenly aware of his surroundings, as he spots a bunch of magical creatures and spirits appearing and disappearing inside the heavy rain. While the goddess is looking for Mikuin outside, the demon takes him deep inside the forest and inside a tree, which is the demon's home. He takes out a towel and scrubs Mikuin down while the mummy returns the favor. The demon tells Mikuin that he should stay here till the rain dies out, but Mikuin couldn't understand and thinks that the demon is telling him that he can never go back. He starts crying, which worries the demon as he quickly grabs a glowing mushroom to quiet him down. The demon slowly realizes that there has been a misunderstanding and Mikuin wasn't lost but only wanted to get back to the shrine. He tells the mummy not to worry as he will take him back to the shrine after the rain. Meanwhile, Jiz and the goddess are worried sick about the missing mummy as they look for Mikuin all around the shrine. The goddess gets sad and starts crying when suddenly she hears a noise and turns around to find Mikuin running towards her. She immediately grabs him lovingly and starts hugging him, while the demon says his goodbye to his new friend and runs back inside the forest. Later that evening, the goddess tells Sora about what happened today, and he asks Mikuin whether he got a chance to thank the demon, but Mikuin shook his head in dismay. Later that night, however, Mikuin puts a small letter by the shrine, which the demon finds, while Mikuin sleeps with Sora. That night, after Tsuzuki had taken his bath, his sister rushes into his room crying and complains that Connie ended up eating her cake all over again. He seems surprised, but his sister tells him that it is the 9th time Connie has done this to her. Tsuzuki promises to deal with it and tells Connie that he can't do all this while living in his house and tells him to act with respect towards his family members, otherwise he is not welcome here. Connie didn't seem to care as he simply falls asleep again while Tsuzuki lets out a sigh and goes to sleep as well. The next morning when he wakes up, though, he realizes that something is off and turns around to find out that Connie is missing from his usual place. Later that afternoon, the friends all meet up at the roof to have lunch, while Daichi shows them the letter that Muku drew for him. Sora laughs at it, claiming that all the familiars are learning how to write small letters and having fun with crayons. But it turns out that Isao is unable to write any letters but is excellent at drawing things like apples. Sora notices that Tsuzuki looks a bit sad and asks whether everything is fine, as he didn't even bring Connie to the shrine today. Tsuzuki looks at him and says that Connie has gone out of the house since morning, as he does what he pleases, that's why he couldn't bring him. Later that evening when Tsuzuki comes back from school, his sister runs from the kitchen and welcomes him back before showing him a plate of sushi, claiming that it is for Connie as she wants to apologize for screaming at him yesterday. Tsuzuki gets a bit worried as Connie never misses his meals, especially when his sister makes sushi. He goes upstairs and tries to focus on his studies but gets worried since it's very late now and Connie has still not shown up. He remembers how he used to try and get rid of the demon, but Connie would always make his way back to him somehow. He then wonders whether he said a little too much yesterday and Connie got hurt by his words. The next day, Sora notices that Tsuzuki doesn't look like himself, as his eyes are droopy and it looks like he hasn't slept at all last night. He asks whether everything is okay, but Tsuzuki shuts him down, saying everything is fine. Sora keeps noticing that Tsuzuki is uncharacteristically messing things up and not acting like himself, so he finally gets him talking and finds out that Connie hasn't returned to his house. Sora asks whether he looked for the demon, but Tsuzuki replies that it was too late in the night. Sora claims that they need to go and find him, but Tsuzuki tells him to leave it be as Connie made his own decision to leave, so if he wants to come back he will do that on his own as well. Later that afternoon, after the school was over, Magi rushes over to Tsuzuki after learning about Connie's disappearance and wonders whether he got lost. Sora tells Tsuzuki that he wants to look for him, and Magi tells him that she will accompany Sora. Before Tsuzuki could even reply, Daichi rushes in as well, asking whether they found Connie yet or not. Tsuzuki tells them all to leave it be as they don't understand how Connie operates, and leaves the classroom while Sora wonders what Tsuzuki will do now. Tsuzuki walks down the stairs and starts having flashbacks to the time when he saved a small dragon familiar and was running away from the hooligan that wanted to hurt him. He suddenly snaps back to reality when a bunch of people walk by him, and he realizes that he needs to find his little demon. Meanwhile, Sora and the others visit the shrine and ask the other familiars whether they saw Connie, but they all shake their heads. Sora and the others decide to split up and try to find the little demon, while Tsuzuki runs through the streets conflicted with his own feelings, as he remembered how much of a mess Connie made, always annoying him and sneaking into his bed, but at the same time he can't stop tears flowing down his eyes as he desperately looks for him. Suddenly Sora spots him and asks whether everything is okay. When suddenly they spot a little demon on top of a roof, they immediately give chase while Tsuzuki tells him to stop, but the demon wouldn't stop even for a second, as it kept jumping over buildings and trees. Tsuzuki ends up losing sight of him but tells Sora which way it went, as he runs after it while Tsuzuki stands there unable to control his feelings. Suddenly his eyes wander towards an old plot for sale, and he goes towards it to find Connie stuck inside a hole in the wall. He lets out a sigh of relief and tugs him out. While Sora runs after the other demon only to find out that it's not Connie, he immediately runs back and apologizes to Tsuki for his mistake when Daichi and Magi arrive with Connie's pants that they found in the river. They start crying, fearing the worst, while Sora tells them that they will find Connie no matter what and was about to run away, but Tsuki grabs him and tells them that he found Connie. Later they all head over to the shrine to collect the other familiars, and after that Tsuki and Connie head home. On the way, Tsuki opens up to Connie about his insecurities and his feelings, and tells him that he is welcome to stay with him as they are family. This brings old memories in Connie as he remembers how he always wanted the warmth of someone caring for him, and he starts crying relentlessly. The next morning is pretty overcast as it kept raining, but when Sora comes back from school he finds a mysterious package waiting for him. He realizes that it's from his dad, which means that it could be dangerous. When suddenly the package starts moving, he decides to take all safety precautions when suddenly Tsuki starts ringing his doorbell. Sora tells him to come back some other time, but Tsuki simply comes in by the garden and forces Sora to open the door. He comes inside while Sora arms himself with a bat, alongside the familiars who also grab anything that they can use as a weapon. Sora tells Tsuki to take the familiars and Pochi outside before he opens the box as it could be dangerous, but the moment Tsuki moves out, Sora locks the door as he doesn't want to put him in danger as well. Suddenly the seal of the box breaks, and a statue emerges from inside it claiming to be the Egyptian god Aion. Sora seems unsure and asks Aion whether he will try to kill him or curse him, but Aion tells him he has no such intentions. In fact, Sora is the one with the bat in his hands. Sora laughs and puts the bat down before opening the door for Tsuki to come in. Aion explains that he was trapped inside an Egyptian gift shop for a while, but recently Sora's father bought him and packed him up to be shipped to Sora, which is annoying because he was never able to look at the ocean. They start talking some more while Tsuki heads over and finds some letters alongside a bag of sand inside the box. Sora immediately stops him from opening it, claiming that it can have scorpions inside. He wears gloves and carefully opens the bag before putting all the sand inside a container, only to find out it's normal sand from Egypt. Mikuin, however, seems very happy as he jumps inside the sandpit and starts playing. Suddenly there's another knock at the door, as Daichi and Magi both have also come to play with the familiars. They get introduced to Aion while he gets tugged on a cart by Pochi, and they all start talking. Suddenly Sora starts hiccuping, while Tsuki makes a joke about how if someone hiccups 100 times he ends up dying. This ends up scaring the living daylight out of Mikuin, who gets extremely sad, but Magi claims that the best way to get rid of hiccups is by getting scared. Hearing this, Mikuin pops a plan and walks towards Sora while undoing his bandages. Sora gets scared as the only thing his dad told him in the letter was not to let the bandages of the mummy come undone. So he starts running after it, but to his surprise the other familiars block his path while Mikuin runs on top of Pochi. They all try catching him while Sora runs after him, scared to death. After a while Mikuin stops and reveals that it was just a plan, and it seemed to have worked as Sora got rid of his hiccups. While Tsuki laughs and tells Mikuin that he was just joking and people can't die from hiccups. To Sora's surprise, Mikuin immediately wraps the bandages around him like it never came out and starts snuggling with him, while the others leave as it was getting late. Later that night, Kaide comes back and meets with Aion. While being a little surprised that his brother didn't send them something dangerous this time, Mikuin runs up to Sora and starts hugging him, while Sora promises him that they will go on even more adventures alongside their friends.